Hi there, welcome back. Today's devlog is all about polishing the first few tasks of the game, so let's get into it. I made the new princess assets and aligned them in Figma, which was a mess, but we'll get into that a bit later. And I also made a simple UI for the cleaning task. As the dev, I know the amount of things you need to clean in the room and where they are exactly. Obviously, the player won't. So for example, they might clean 4 out of 5 things and then just wait for something to happen because they think they finished that task. So to make the experience a bit clearer, I wanted to add this UI. I went into some issues like the counter stopping at 4 and then continuing the game, but overall it wasn't the hardest thing to implement. So now I can finally say I'm finished with the first 2 tasks. So now I'm focusing on the third task, which is the wallpaper color one that I started working on last devlog. Since the colors were already picked out, I just pasted the hex code to the Rapid Tables website to get their RGB values, and then pasted those values in the code. In game, this was really fun because it's the second item that you can choose for yourself, with the first being the crown. So some player might choose the center crown and the light blue wallpaper, but another player could choose the right crown and the pink wallpaper. And I think this customization really adds to the experience of the game. After that was done, now it's time to use the new princess assets. See, I already had them ready with an idle and running sprites, as well as the new crown sprites because I also redid them. However, the issue was using these two together. The old princess only had an idle animation running the entire time, so the crown area looked fine no matter what happened. But if I used the new princess and started running to the left, the crown would still be facing our direction like it's in idle mode. So I mixed the two assets together in Figma to make 3 variations of that one asset, since the princess wearing the crown is only for the first task and then you take it off. So here is the first one in game. I only did the left running and idle animation, and she's so tiny. I don't know why she's that small, but I did scale her up and also did the right running animation. And she kind of looks like she's dancing here, but I don't know, I really like how funky it looks. I think it adds to the whole concept of the game. So to change the sprite based on the player's choice, I followed this tutorial, which made things so easy for me. It's unreal how well this trick works. Now the second issue with this is that once I take off the crown and use the new princess assets but without the crown, the sprite change gets a bit messed up, and that's totally a mistake on my end, by the way, because of the way I aligned the sprite in Figma. The crown sprite being added to the normal sprite changed the height of it, which meant the normal sprite on its own was too short. And since the sprite is centered in Godot, that's why when I changed to it in the game, the sprite looked like it was floating away. This was a total headache to do in Figma, but I made it work in the end. When I was testing the game later on, I found another issue, which is that when the crown is placed in Chocolate's inventory, it appeared as the center crown, even though I chose the right crown. So I fixed that as well. Now after the wallpaper task, we have the dress gift. This is the first dress that the player will get, and it also starts the dialogue that adds to the story of the game. However, I could not get these flags to work right at all, and it was honestly driving me insane. Either the first dialogue wasn't starting, or the princess would wear the dress even before the dialogue starts, or nothing would work at all. So look at this. When I click on the mannequin for the first time, the dress should appear on the mannequin and not the princess. And the dialogue isn't starting either. So there were so many variations of this problem, and I think the main issue was this. Usually flags are used with only 1 or 0 values. So if something happens, then the flag goes from 0 to 1. And if the flag is 1, then do this block of code. That's just how it works in programming. And as I was going insane, I started adding the number 2 to the mix, even though it felt like I was committing a programming crime. And after a few hours of this, I realized I have no issue of being a criminal. So the flag started to increment by 1 every time a condition was true. And that made things so much easier you don't understand. So this is how it works right now, just like how I wanted. The next thing I worked on was the dialogue profiles for the characters, since we have a very long and important dialogue coming up, so I knew the profiles needed to change since I've been avoiding them the entire time. This is how they looked like in the first scene, and I was happy with it, so we're moving on to important things now. This dialogue is super important because it tells you all about the princess and Chocolat and the massive problem at hand, which is that you don't have enough hearts to give to your people at your coronation ceremony. Even though Chocolat just gave you 100 hearts, but it was gone immediately because everything costs something, like for example the wallpaper paint you just chose. So in order to get that amount, Chocolat will give you some of her hearts every time she thinks you're taking a step forward as a princess. This is by far the longest dialogue in the game so far, but since it's the last thing in this day, so I thought it's fine. And speaking of days, the way this game is gonna work is that it's divided into 3 days. So all the previous devlogs plus this one are just for the first day of you being a princess, with the 3rd day having your ceremony in it. And to transition between each day in the game, I made this scene after drawing the assets, and then I started animating them. The scene is basically going to be the only transition scene, so I made sure to make it as neutral as possible so that it fits after both the 1st and the 2nd day without having to make different scenes for each day, you know? So far the game is pretty much 33% done, I guess, considering the 1st day is complete. However, we still have a few issues. The 1st scene and the crown choosing scene don't have their backgrounds yet, so I need to draw that eventually. And also, now that there's a lot of resources in the game, it's starting to slow down in performance a lot. So I'm thinking of making a loading screen before the game starts and use the Godot resource preloader, but we will see how that goes in the next devlogs. That is it for this devlog. Thank you for watching and stay hellish.